let's talk about atrophy first. So atrophy, basically, when you think of atrophy, this is when tissues shrink in size. All right, and they do so either by their cells, a decrease in cell size, so the cells of the tissue actually get smaller, or a decrease in cell number, or it could be both. I mean, it depends on the type of tissue, the type of situation, and so on. All right. So atrophy is the shrinking or the wasting away of tissues. All right, and either due to a decrease in cell size and cell number. Now, I know this sounds tedious to be getting this specific, but you're going to see why in a second. That we do need to differentiate between tissue growth and cell size and cell number. Now, atrophy isn't always pathologic. It's a normal part of life. All right, as we grow and we age, I should say as we age, as we move through life, our tissues are going to slowly start to atrophy, and tissues that where it's really noticeable where atrophy occurs are going to be the brain, kidneys, all right, and the heart. All right, the brain, the kidneys, and the heart. Kidneys. All right, now one thing that these organs really have in common is that the main functional cells that make up or functional units of these tissues, they don't undergo mitosis. The neurons, the nephrons, and then the cardiac myocytes. All right, you don't regenerate nephrons in kidneys. You don't regenerate regenerate neurons in the brain, and you don't regenerate cardiac muscle tissue. But as you know, anything that is organic, cells are no exemption from that. Anything that organic has a shelf life. Anything that is organic is going to naturally break down over time, especially something like cells that are constantly stressed on a day-to-day basis. All right, and remember, when we say organic, that means something that contains carbon, not the rip-off section of the grocery store. All right, so anything that is organic contains carbon. All right, so naturally these organs are going to shrink. So the brain is going to get smaller in size as we get older. All right, and once we get to about, I think it's like age 40 or 50, we lose about 10% of our nephrons per decade. All right, which is going to cause your kidneys to slowly atrophy. The beauty of kidneys, though, is that they're incredibly adaptable organs. So I mean, it takes a lot of loss before you really notice the effects with the kidneys. All right, same thing with the heart. Muscle cells are going to slowly die in the heart. All right, so you get the picture here. But like, for example, if we think of a disease like Alzheimer's disease, which is a form of dementia, pathologically that disease causes degenerative changes in the brain. All right, especially it causes wasting away the cerebral cortex of the brain. All right, so as a result, that is going to cause the brain to atrophy at a much more rapid rate. All right. If you have a heart attack, if you have a massive heart attack, all right, and a bunch of cardiac muscle tissue dies, well, guess what? I mean, that's that tissue's that tissue is going to be replaced with scar tissue, but it's not the same. It's not cardiac muscle tissue. So the functional tissue in the heart actually shrank in size. All right, same thing with the kidneys. If you have a kidney disorder and nephrons are destroyed, the amount of functional units in that kidney has gone down. All right, so the wasting away or shrinkage of a tissue. All right. Now, atrophy can occur, as well, because of neurological complications, disuse, malnourishment. All right, if an organ or a tissue doesn't get enough nutrients delivered to it, that's going to cause it to reduce and shrink in size. All right, whether it's due to a lack of blood flow, actually malnourishment itself, that would more than likely be the situation here. This is a picture of a recovered POW. I found this picture. I think it's I don't know. I didn't see what war this POW that was recovered from, but thank goodness they were recovered, obviously. But the atrophy here is very noticeable. All right, so a person who is malnourished, whether it's in this situation like a prisoner of war here, someone who has a severe GI disorder and you have a hard time absorbing nutrients, or a chronic cancer patient, or not chronic, a terminal cancer patient, who is very basically emaciated or wasted away. The proper term for that is cachexia. When we say someone is wasting away. That's an example of malnourishment. All right, there's a chance that there's probably some disuses here as well. I mean, you don't need me to sit here and tell you that if you don't use your muscles, they're going to shrink. All right, if you don't use your muscles, they're going to shrink. All right, I mean, if you've ever broken a bone and had a cast, or me, I've been through 2 knee surgeries, and the first time around, especially, I had my leg immobilized for close to a month. Right, they had a little bit of range of motion and movement, but we were kind of taking our time getting out of that. I mean, there was noticeable atrophy, in the muscle tissue, and in my leg. All right, I should say my thigh and my leg, but so it doesn't take very long. All right. If you see a patient who has had I've worked with patients who've had traumatic brain injuries before. I used to be a caregiver for them for a while when I was in grad school, and some of my patients, or residents would probably be a better word to describe them. Some of my residents were spend most of their time in bed. All right, and obviously that's going to cause noticeable atrophy of the muscle tissue because you're just not going to use it. All right, and your body's not going to waste energy essentially maintaining organs or tissues that you're not going to use. Now, when you look in a situation like this as well, with the naked eye, the noticeable atrophy is going to be with the muscles and the bones. All right, because you have to remember, if muscles are going to atrophy, bones are going to as well. All right. And what you can't see here is that the internal organs have also atrophied as well. Obviously, you can't see that, but it's going to be this is obviously more a person who's experienced just overall just general malnutrition due to obviously the harsh living conditions of being a POW, and what was I going to say? And obviously, it's going to cause basically overall atrophy of the entire self. All right. Is this recoverable? Yeah, I mean, you get the person, obviously you re-nourish the person, pump them full of calories. Now, is it 100% reversible? I mean, if it's severe damage and wasting of the muscles, typically it's not going to be 100% recovered from that. But I mean, that tissue will, pretty much return to normal for the most part. So this is an example over here of neurogenic atrophy. Neuro meaning nerve, genic meaning originating from. So basically what we're saying here is that this is muscle atrophy caused by a neurological issue. Because remember, muscle cells are heavily, especially skeletal muscle cells, are heavily innervated by very large motor neurons. All right, and if someone has a neurological disease like multiple sclerosis, ALS, spinal cord trauma, severely, like a chronic herniated disc. All right, someone sustained a physical injury to a nerve, like a gunshot victim, in a bullet or a pellet, hit a nerve and damaged it. All right, what's going to happen is due to the lack of neural stimulation of these muscles, they're just going to waste away. All right, because you can see here in this image, this is what normal fascicles or bundles of muscle cells look like, and then this is obviously muscle tissue that's wasting away. All right, so you get the picture here that tissues can either shrink due to a reduction in size and or a reduction in number. All right, and atrophy can either be natural or pathologic. Or another example. Let's give one more example before we move on. Let's talk about menopause. All right, menopause. Yeah, again, pardon my horrendous handwriting, people. I'm still trying to get used to this new device I'm using. I'm using one of those bamboo thingamajiggers, those tablets. But it's really cool, but I'm just horrible with this stuff. So, but with menopause, basically with menopause, this is a point in time in life in females. I mean, males kind of go through their own form of menopause, but it's physiologically, it's more psychological than physiological. But with females, with females, it's a lot more strong due to the plummeting of estrogen. All right, so then as a result, that's going to cause, for example, the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, the uterus, the cervix, and so on. It's going to cause those major reproductive organs to shrink in size because, estrogen is what maintains the size of those reproductive organs while the female is reproductively capable. That's even a way to say it, but you get the picture. when a female is capable of undergoing reproduction, it's due to these, to these high amounts of estrogen. And then when menopause comes around, then that is going to cause those organs to shrink. So if you were to, whether you're scoping a female pelvis or dissecting cadavers, if you were to compare and contrast, a postmenopausal female's reproductive system versus a female of reproductive age, childbearing age, you're gonna see significant differences between the two. All right. All right. So that's atrophy. I think we've kind of given plenty